Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Will you stand with me and join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Chair Burton,
Present.
Commissioner Puppy,
Here.
Commissioner Ragsdale,
Here.
Commissioner Kupsick,
Here.
Vice Chair Damasio,
Here.
Commissioner Bassler,
Here.
Commissioner Trupiano,
Here.
Alternate Hester, Alternate Manuel.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the February 10th, 2026 Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes from February 10th as presented.
May I have a second? Been second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3, Sundance Community Master Plan Amendment, Yuma Road and Dean Road, case number PLZZ-25-0012. The public hearing and request that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval to the City Council, subject to conditions A through P. Presenting tonight will be Ms. Mandy Woods.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mandy Woods. I'm a Principal Planner here with Development Services, and tonight I will be presenting the Sundance CMP Major Amendment for Yuma Road and Dean Road, which is case PLZZ 25-0012. Just a brief overview of this request. The applicant is Jeff Bliley with Gilbert Bliley PLC on behalf of the owner, which is Yuma Dean 10 LLC. The location is west of the southwest corner of Yuma Road and Dean Road. That is comprised of 2 parcels, which will be shown on the next slide on the context map. And the request tonight is to just amend the Sundance Community Master Plan, or CMP, and it's to include the subject property, which is approximately 8.3 acres, as a commercial land use designation for the purpose of eventually developing that property, as well as the one to the west of it for multifamily residential. And as promised, the context map shows the subject property that is highlighted in, or outlined in red there. The site itself currently is vacant. To the north, we have the vacant auxiliary field and Windmill Village that's slightly to the west of that. To the south, we have some of the single-family residential that's within the Sundance community. East is commercial and civic services, and then to the west is more single-family residential, as well as that vacant parcel that's already within the Sundance CMP, which is intended to be developed with the subject property that's highlighted. The general plan land use of the property is master plan community, so there's no change for the general plan land use designation being requested. The existing zoning of the property is commercial center, or CC, and what the proposed zoning would be is the same, but the Sundance CMP overlay would extend to cover this property as well. And then now on the screen there, this is the Sundance CMP land use exhibit that is existing, but it is adding the new subject parcel that is of this request. And I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next slide because that is so hard to read on this one. So this is just a zoom in so you can see the subject request is for 34C to include that within the CMP, and it would be assigned a commercial land use, which allows multifamily residential per the standards of the CMP. And the reason that this is a major amendment, it's because we're adding land to a CMP, and that is one of the typical major amendment triggers. 34C, as stated, is anticipated to develop with 34B, which is that parcel along Yuma that is directly to the west of 34C. And that would form one multifamily residential project. 34B will have a lower density with just 32 units, and then 34C will have approximately 156 units, at least that's what's proposed with the concurrent site plan at the time, for a total of 188 units. The density for 34C is slightly higher, just slightly higher than the current CC zoning, but there's also higher front, side, and rear setbacks compared to the existing CC zoning, so it's kind of a trade-off, makes it a little bit more compatible with that adjacent single-family residential. Then continuing on with the unit counts, so that overall planned number of units in the Sundance CMP is increasing from 6,798 to 6,954 with this request. The current CMP does have a maximum unit cap of 6,933. So to make up that difference, this amendment does allow an exception that basically allows an additional 21 units, but those extra units would be restricted only for parcel 34C. So it doesn't increase the unit cap for anything other than the land area that is the subject of the request tonight. But then including 34C, the overall CMP density is approximately 3.4, which is consistent with the CMP target density of 5.1 overall. As with most CMPs and PADs, there are modified provisions that are included in those. This amendment does include a modified provision that relates to building heights. So our development code requires a step-down provision for multifamily residential buildings that are more than 35 feet in height and within 50 feet of an adjacent residential area. And what this does, we've just tweaked the language within that step-down provision to just account for there's a 90-foot wide HOA tract and wash along the southern boundary of the property, which already serves as kind of a natural buffer between this use and the adjacent single-family use. So instead of applying that step-down provision directly to that also residentially zoned HOA tract, what it does is it just applies the step down from the building itself, the multifamily residential building, to the nearest property line of an actual single-family residential use rather than zoning. So it's just taking into account the existing conditions of the property. And that would be restricted just for this particular parcel. For public participation, the neighborhood meeting was held very close to the site at the Coyote Branch Buckeye Library, and that was back in January, on January 26th. The attendees included the project team, city staff, we had one council person, and then one neighbor was in attendance just to ask questions. All noticing for the hearings were completed in accordance with our code requirements. And at this time, there's been no formal feedback, opposition, or support received for this request. For future development of this subject property, as well as the parcel that's to the west, as previously stated, there is a companion site plan request that is in for review. That case has received first review comments, so it's in the process, but as this team knows, it's going to be administrative in approval just because of the statute requirements changing. So the site plan right now shows kind of garden style multifamily residential comprised of 2- and 3-story buildings with a clubhouse and amenity areas for the residents. There was a TIA, or traffic impact analysis, submitted and approved with this CMP request. And then, as is typical for projects like these, the developer will complete any transportation, water, sewer, infrastructure improvements as determined by either the TIA or the upcoming site plan approval. For emergency services, the property will be serviced by city fire and police, and then the applicant did complete the required adequate school facilities notification and coordination process with all applicable school districts. And to conclude the analysis on this one, the case does further goals of the Buckeye General Plan, especially given the existing general plan land use of master plan community. Inclusion within the CMP actually brings the property into more conformance with the general plan, if anything. It conforms to the development code and also proposes some alternate standards that will result in high quality development, and there are no outstanding issues from reviewing departments. And with that, the recommendation is to conduct a public hearing, and then staff recommends approval of PLZZ 2512 to City Council subject to conditions A through P. I did want to note that the applicant is here tonight to assist and answer any questions that you might have.
Would you like to speak now?
Jeff Bliley with Gilbert Bliley, here on behalf of the applicant. Just to reiterate a couple of things, man. He said that the piece of property that we're rezoning tonight or adding into the Sundance CMP already has the old obsolete commercial center zoning, which allows multifamily development, 3-story development on it, but there's a cap of 14.5 dwelling units per acre. So the reason we're doing this rezone is that the density for the piece that we're rezoning is going to be a little more dense. I think we're about 18.8. But the trade-off is you get rid of some obsolete zoning, you bring it in, you get more setbacks, more control into the Sundance. So that's why we're here tonight. And just a little bit about the project. It is a project that's going to be funded by the Arizona Authority, so that the rents will be restricted. There'll be deed restrictions on the property for a 30-year period, and that to qualify for the rents, you have to be 60% of the median income for households in Arizona. So it's going to be tailored to a more affordable type project that'll meet some of the needs that aren't really met here in the city of Buckeye. Other than that, just happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'm going to do a little something different because I always forget Sebastian. Sebastian, do you have any questions?
Yes, I'm just trying to remember in my mind, their half road improvement. Will that complete that half road all the way from Watson over to Dean? Because I know there's that one section where it goes into 2 lanes. I know they only have to do the half road.
If there's any portions of the road that aren't completed in front of our property, we would complete those. I'm not aware of any, but I believe there is some right-of-way that has to be dedicated.
Yeah,
The piece we're looking at, and there may be some additional improvements, but we would be completing all of the half-street improvements adjacent to the property, both parcels, whatever's not already done.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't bring it all the way to Dean, because that's in front of the commercial center there that should have already done the half-street improvements. Outside.
Well, they were, I agree, they've already done those half-street improvements. I was just curious, because it's kind of a pain, it'd be kind of a pain to go from like 3 lanes down to 1 lane, or 1 lane, then back to 2 lanes. But, okay, I just trying to remember in my mind. And I know site plans, we're not going to order site plan, but when it is done, will there be a direct connection from these apartments or these multi-family dwellings to like the library complex area, or will they have to go out to Yuma? No, yeah, out to Yuma.
There won't be a vehicular connection, but there most likely will be a pedestrian connection.
Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you. Mr. Bassler.
My question really doesn't deal with the project, although it does hinge on the project. Page 69 of the application is a certification of adequate school facilities. Buckeye Union High School did not sign it. It's not sent back. It's blank, so it is not completed for Buckeye Union High School. Page 78 is Liberty, and they did send it back. We have school issue in Buckeye. And we keep getting these things back that says we have adequate schooling. And of a matter of principle, who is watching this growth in the number of students with all of the housing that we have approved? All these schools keep saying they have adequate facilities for students. Is that planning and zoning? Are you keeping track of what, this is not your project,
Oh, I know.
okay? Who is keeping track of all these things, all these students that are coming into the Buckeye area, and these schools keep signing off that they have adequate facilities, when we know our history has not been good at passing bond issues or increasing our schools? So when do we stop and say, hey, we don't have enough schools? When do we start putting pressure? When do we start looking at that? So it's a matter of a principle that I've been wrestling with, and just wonder where we are as a city, who is monitoring the student population, and where is the student load going? So that's where my questions come. I'm okay with your project. That's not a problem. My problem is we keep approving projects, the schools keep saying they have adequate facilities, and they don't. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's my question. Maybe that's not a question for now, but it's a question I think that needs to be addressed, and who's monitoring that?
Commissioner Bassler, I think a deeper discussion is probably in order, but I will say that all of the school districts that are located within our boundaries, they have consultants that they use on an annual basis. We meet with them, provide them data to use in their models to determine when they need to build new facilities, new schools, expand existing schools, hire teachers, all those types of things. So they are, it's a partnership really between the Planning and Zoning Division at the City of Buckeye, providing the anticipated growth data based on the applications that we receive to those districts. Now, the part that's not the city's purview is how they do it, how they get the money. You mentioned bonds, you mentioned state funding of education. Those are obviously separate political subdivisions. The state of Arizona and the school districts themselves, the city kind of stays out of the funding issue. But we are giving them the data so they are aware of when they'll likely see increases and where they'll likely see increases in student population.
So when Liberty responds that they have adequate, are they talking about this project, or are they talking about all the other projects which have come before that have not been built yet, that are going to impact on Liberty? So is it this project or all the accumulation that will impact on Liberty?
I don't want to speak for the school district and what their intent was, but again, they are provided the wholesale picture of kind of what is going on in Buckeye. So my guess, and this is purely a guess, is when they say, yes, we have adequate capacity, what that means is, yes, we were anticipating this growth, and we're planning for it.
Okay, thank you.
May I comment? Is that okay? I can comment?
Chair, that's in your discretion, if you'd allow the comment out of order.
Ms. Ragsdale.
I'm on the Buckeye Elementary School Board, and you're correct. We do have consultants who tell us where the growth is coming, how many children will be, and what school age they're anticipating, and we have been able to keep up with our growth on our elementary school. However, I know for a fact when my daughter attended the new Buckeye High School, it was built for 1,000 students, and there were 800 in the whole school. My granddaughter graduated from there last year, and there were 800 in her graduating class, which makes it way too overcrowded. So I can see why they didn't sign it. They don't have capacity. That's my opinion.
But you also have two charter high schools.
There are 2 charter high schools. However, Buckeye Elementary still had 801 senior level graduating class, and the high school was built for 1,000.
Okay.
That's all.
Any questions? Thank you. Ms. Puppy?
Okay, are we going out of order or not? No? Okay, okay. Yes, I have one question. I think this might be for you, Ms. Woods. Can we go back to the map that you showed with the parcels so that people know what I'm talking about? Yes, I'm looking at 34C, which was the subject and being talked about. To the right of that, what exactly is that parcel? On the west, I guess is, right, west? Yeah. I mean, east, I'm sorry. Sorry. Oh, that's where the, okay. Because I thought it had to be in there somewhere. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think that was my only question. Thank you.
Ms. Cupsack?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Damasio? No questions, sir. Thank you. All right, at this time, I will open this up to a public hearing. Ms. Woods? I'm sorry. Carrie? Are there any speaker cards?
We have none, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the audience which to speak? Anybody want to speak? All right, thank you. Then I will close this. And now, may I have a motion?
Chair, I'd like to make the motion to approve PLZZ-25-0012 to City Council, subject to conditions A through P.
I'll second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, and we're rolling. Agenda item 3B, GFT Ready Mix Concrete, conditional use permit, case number PLZ U-25-006. This is a public hearing and request that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval to City Council subject to conditions A through T. We will be presented by Mr. Joe Mueller.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. This is the GFT Ready Mix Concrete conditional use permit for a proposed aggregate sand and gravel extraction operation with an ancillary batch plant. Before I get too far along, Chair, I do want to clarify, it's a conditional use permit that we're looking at here. Final approval would be with the Planning and Zoning Commission, so it would not go to council. With that clarification, the applicant tonight is Jeff Bliley of Gilbert Bliley PLLC on behalf of the property owner, MP Hazen Sand and Rock LLC. They are requesting the conditional use permit within the rural residential zoning district. The site is generally located about 1,300 feet east of the southeast corner of Rooks Road and Hazen Road, just north of the Gila River. And specifically what they're looking to do here is the site is 63 acres, or they're looking to operate on 63 acres of about a 77-acre site. They're looking to do kind of an open pit aggregate extraction operation. They'll be mining for sand and gravel, earth products that they will use primarily in a ancillary cement batch plant that will be located on site. That plant will be about 60 feet tall, and they'll be producing cement that will then be distributed using kind of your traditional cement truck. Initially, half the site will remain farmland as it currently is until such time that the mining operation expands to the eastern portion of the site. They will landscape along Hazen Road to provide a landscape buffer from the right-of-way. And the batch plant and other equipment on site will kind of move around the site over the years so that they can, as the mining moves around, they'll have to move the equipment to facilitate mining throughout the entire site. As I mentioned, the zoning is rural residential, which is one of the obsolete zoning designations within the city's development code. Resource extraction is not listed in the obsolete zoning use table. It is listed in the current use table under agricultural zoning as a conditional use. And the development code also specifies that the agricultural zoning district is a commensurate zoning district to the rural residential, meaning it's the closest approximation of our current districts that we use for that obsolete district. And as such, staff made an interpretation to help streamline the process for the applicant here that the proposed use could be processed as a conditional use permit within the rural residential zoning designation that avoided the need for doing the rezoning and then doing the conditional use permit. So that's what we're here for today. Kind of the purpose of the conditional uses allows staff and the commission to take a deeper dive look into the proposed use and assess the use more on the case-by-case basis rather than it just being a permitted use that would go straight to an administrative site plan. So the site is located, as I mentioned, east of Rooks Road on the southern side of Hazen. The southern boundary of the site is the Gila River. To the north, on the north side of Hazen Road, we have a future APS substation. To the west is another aggregate sand and gravel site or similar type of site. That is actually in unincorporated Maricopa County. So the city does not have any authority over that property. And then to the east, we have a large equestrian type land user. I want to take just kind of a moment here to discuss the difference between these types of sites within unincorporated county properties and in the city. It is a little unusual. It may become more common over time, but right now it's not typical for these types of uses to be located within the city of Buckeye. A big reason for that is state statute grants vast exemptions from both county zoning and building authority for properties located within unincorporated county properties. What that means is typically once they receive all of their state required approvals and permits, they can just proceed with operation on the site. They do not have to go to the county to get a site plan approval or zoning approval, and the such. Now, that statute does not extend to incorporated towns or cities. That is exclusively only for unincorporated parts of the county. So obviously, we're here within the city of Buckeye. The site is within Buckeye's jurisdiction. So it does have to follow all development code requirements. And that's kind of why we're here. This caused some challenges, or it presented some challenges both for the applicant team and staff, as we haven't worked on really many of these sites within the city. And the development code, it isn't well built to handle this type of use. And an example of that is the landscaping requirements. Now, obviously, the site will be landscaped along Hazen Road, but the development code would normally require landscaping within the site as well. Well, this operation the site will be dug out, so it doesn't really make sense for that requirement for the applicant to be held to that requirement, as the site will be excavated. And kind of following up on that, staff is recommending some kind of more customized conditions for this proposed conditional use permit. One of them, as I mentioned, the half of the site will remain farmland for the immediate near term. As part of that, the applicant will not be able to install landscaping along the eastern portion of the site, so that they don't disrupt the irrigation ditch that will help serve the agricultural operation. The condition states that once the mining operation moves onto the eastern portion of the site, that the landscaping will have to be completed along the entire Hazen Road right-of-way. Another condition is that all lighting must comply with development code requirements. That staff came up with that condition as many sites like this may use high-powered floodlights that will not typically be permitted within city developments. All conditions that are being proposed by or recommended by staff have been reviewed by and agreed to by the applicant. The applicant team has met all required public participation. There was a neighborhood meeting held December 18th of 2025 at the Chamber of Commerce. There were no public attendees at that meeting, and all required site postings and mailings have been completed by the applicant. So staff recommends approval of PLZU 250006, subject to recommended conditions A through T. And I do believe the applicant is here to speak if he so chooses. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Hello, Jeff Bliley again. Just a few things. As Joe pointed out, there hasn't been a lot of mining operations in cities because it's so easy to go through the county process, basically exempt. You don't even need a site plan, you just get some normal permitting through the state and you get to go. However, Arizona legislation on the general plans requires cities to take into account aggregate mining operations to accommodate development within their cities. And so all cities are supposed to be more in tune with making sure that there's this vital supply of aggregate and concrete to support all the development that's occurring proximate to where the development's occurring. There's a lot of development occurring in Buckeye, and I can tell you, I do a lot of work in Buckeye, and while I have never done a mining, this is my first, mining operation, anything for it. I'm doing another one, and I've got another one coming. So this is going to be the first of a few that you're going to see, because it's a critical need, a critical resource to support, and you want it near where the development's occurring. There's a site right next to us, as Joe pointed out, that's already doing this operation. It's in unincorporated Maricopa County. For whatever reason, this piece of property was annexed a number of years ago when the adjacent horse property was annexed. And so we're here today asking for this conditional use permit. One of the nice things about having it in the city is it does give you a little bit more control. Since the site next to us basically just went through kind of an exempt process and just started operating, we've had to go through the city process, which has been somewhat modified because mining operation, while development it's not a final use of the property. It's kind of an interim use, even though it's a long-term interim use, because ultimately the property will be mined out and then it'll do something else. And I think the staff report points out that it looks like it's going to be that the city's long-term plans are to have some type of, water feature amenity in that area, which is what this ultimately will end up being. We've had to do things like work with the staff on the TIA and the roads. For instance, Hazen Road, we're making improvements to Hazen Road. We're putting in a right turn decel lane. We're widening it for the left turn lane, things that didn't happen with the adjacent property. They have the same type of use, but no improvements to Hazen whatsoever. The landscaping, again, we worked through staff. It made sense to landscape along Hazen, which we're going to be doing. But again, if it was in the county like the adjacent property, none of that happened. So while it's been an interesting process, because I think it's been new to all of us, I think it's something the city needed. I think they've been working with us because they know it's a use that's needed in the city, and I think you're going to see a few in the future, and this process allows you to review it and make sure it's appropriate. And I do think it's appropriate given what's adjacent on the west, the equestrian facility, and on the east is the equestrian, on the west is a similar aggregate mining, and all to the north is going to be a very large APS substation. So it's surrounded by uses that are going to be very compatible and with the use that's being proposed. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bliley. Sebastian, any questions?
I have no questions. Seems like a good place for something like this. Thank you.
Mr. Bassler?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Damasio?
No questions.
Ms. Cupstack?
Mr. Bliley, is there any way, we know that the equestrian center is right next door, and there's people that live there, and then there's an RV park and people live there, and the current facility that's there, it doesn't have to have any regulations, operates 24 hours a day, and at 2:30 in the morning, they hear the beeping sound of the trucks and stuff. Is there any, will there be any noise limits as far as time of day and lighting and that kind of stuff, or is it?
I don't know that there's any operational limits, because it does happen throughout the day. I mean, even at night, there are operations, but we certainly have worked with staff about the lighting. We took a look at the lighting, we're making sure that, and most of the lighting, again, because of the way it is, it's kind of temporary lighting. It gets moved around. It's not permanent lighting. We've agreed that all of it will be, kind of full cutoff, showing only down, so you don't have that light bleed off the site. So, yes, there will be activity at the site, by the nature of the operation, of the aggregate mining operation, but, and I think we've done everything we can to try to mitigate the impacts.
And in the presentation, it said the eastern side of the property is supposed to be landscaped, and that's the side that's next to the equestrian center, did he?
Yeah, so what'll happen is, if you look at the pieces, we're going to start on the west. So when we start on the west, we're going to landscape the west. The east is farmland. Once the operation finally gets over to the east, which is closer to the equestrian center, then that strip will be landscaped along Hazel.
Oh, along Hazel.
It'll be many years before, as you know how these operations go, it's a slow process to mow.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Ragsdale?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Puppy?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't catch, Bliley? Was it?
Bliley.
Mr. Bliley, I'm sorry. Yes, I have a couple of questions. Ms. Cupsick already asked a couple that I also had, but I do have a couple more. How wide, I know we haven't gotten to that point, but how wide are you, or is your applicant thinking of having the landscaping buffer? How wide would that be?
Along Hazen, it's probably in the staff report, maybe Joe, you can, I don't have it, it's,
Chair, Commissioner Puppy, I believe it's going to be 20 feet wide along Hazen.
Okay. And so I thought that they had discussed that, Joseph had, or Mr. Mueller had discussed, on the east side, correct? Yeah, I'm trying to clarify, on the east side, they were also going to put some landscaping, or was it on the west side?
we're starting on the west, so if you take the site and just basically cut it in half, the west half is where we're gonna start the operations.
Yes,
We'll landscape along Hazen on the west side. We will not landscape along the east side because the drainage ditch needs to remain in place while the farming operations are going on. Once the operation switches to the east and the farming goes away, then the irrigation ditch can go away, and then landscaping can go away.
okay, so that landscaping would still only be on Hazen, correct?
Only on Hazen, yes.
Okay, I misunderstood what that meant. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Also, I'm just curious, like a horse property's there, and I have a concern about the noise from that plant and the poor horses. I'm an animal lover, and I just, personally, I guess, why did they pick, just because there was another aggregate operation there?
Well, there is another aggregate operation.
Right.
I mean, it's adjacent to the to the river bottom. That's
Right.
why it's appropriate for that particular.
But it looks like this is going to be even closer to that the equestrian center.
It is a little closer because it's east of the existing
So
facility.
what measures will your applicant take to make sure there's some kind of a noise buffer? I understand the lighting has already been addressed. Some kind of a noise buffer.
I don't know what, other than just have contain the operations are within the site. I don't know what else we can do to.
Okay, I have an issue with that because if I had owned that equestrian center, I would not want that right next to my horses. It spooks them. They are going to be agitated and nervous the whole time. And that's that. So I don't have any more questions, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bliley, I live about 2 blocks from there. So I see the lights at the other spot.
Right.
I watched them drag their equipment in there just because they wanted to, and it looked like a great spot. Your spot did the very same thing, but you found out that it was city property, so you had to stop. Now we're here. The equestrian center is right there. There are people living there. In those trailers, there's a house there on that property that's close to the first concrete place, and the people that live in that house are sleeping with earplugs. The people in the trailers that live in the trailers out there aren't very happy with the equestrian center. because of that Ready Creek spot being there. I understood what you said, but to me, it sounded as though you were trying to make it fit for use. And that's what you're supposed to do, because that's what you get paid for. But again, I live there. The dust, spooking the animals. And I know that's going way out for Teddy, because I'm not an animal lover. But I understand. And I can't, in good conscience, I don't agree with where this is proposed to go. Here's a question for you. What happens after the site operation closes? What happens to the property? Once you're finished digging, you've got all the concrete out of there. I don't know. I'm guessing whatever it is, the aggregate. What happens to the property? Does it become another hidden lake?
I think if you don't fill it in, it's going to fill in with water. The city looked at it as kind of an amenity that they've got planned for along the river.
Okay. What about the dust as they dig? What about the dust that blows towards the equestrian center and even my house? Because I live on the corner, just right on the corner there, and I have a pool, and I'm noticing it more dirty. And I didn't even attribute it to this, but that's probably what's happening.
You know, we're regulated and have to maintain the dust on the site. Like any other type of use that has abuse. So there's regulations that I can't, so no dust goes anywhere. Are regulated to keep the dust down. But there's county regulations regarding dust.
Mm-hmm.
Have to comply with those. As I mentioned on the lighting, you're going to have more oversight on this site on the lighting because, again, it's in the city versus next to us, it's in the county that really doesn't have much regulations on it.
Okay. Okay.
Sure. And if he can, he's going to know more about the operation.
If excuse me, if you would step to the podium and. Okay, it's all right.
Just because of recording the microphone.
If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
John Casey. I'm the owner of GFT Ready Mix. We are the ones that would be operating and mining in that area. So a couple of things I can do to address some of your questions and your concerns. We've gone to a lot of lengths to allow if you look at any other site, the farming and agricultural stops. We do that obviously to support the community and those things. In addition to, as far as noise goes, the new equipment is very quiet, and we have a lot of noise regulations for the employees that MSHA oversees. So these sites are much, much quieter than what you remember in the past. As far as dust goes, dust isn't our problem on that site, it's mud. The entire site is a wet site, so there's very little dust, and any dust emissions is controlled by the Maricopa County ADEQ, the dust control, and trust me, they are diligent in what they do. That's one of the permits that we have already received and that we have to work through is how do we mitigate that? How do we control the surfaces? Not just the dust emissions, but we also control track out onto the road so that the road itself, obviously mud turns into dust if it gets to the road. We control that track out as well through a variety of different routes, shakers, and we actually have washes that the trucks run through before they ever leave the site. So there's a lot of mitigation. We are locally owned. I live here, my family's here. We are operated, very intensely involved with our communities. So I 100% understand and your concerns. One of the other things was why here? these resources are limited in where they're at. These resources are on the river bottom. And so that's why that entire area is developed. Literally, all the way down that corridor of Hazen along that river bottom, every piece of those properties are owned and operated. They're going to be mined. They live in the county, frankly, is why they did. I also wanted to address one of the things that you said, that we saw this, we wanted it. We did not realize that this had been annexed. So that, to answer your question, we received all of the applicable permits, our flood control, our mining, everything. And yes, we did get ahead of ourselves, but we were proactive in reaching out to Buckeye. We weren't reactive, waiting for someone to go, oh, wait a minute, how is this happening? So we were part of the process in involving this. We knew what we were getting into once we did. We also knew it was unlikely that anybody was going to notice from some period of time because Vulcan is already operating in some others. But you may notice the difference even in the beginning, before we knew that we were in Buckeye. We already put up a nice fence and shaded and controlled those things, whereas Vulcan, they just go and do what Vulcan does. And same thing with the farming. Because we're going to open up smaller areas, our impact is far lower. And we're not, our only real use is what we consume. So unlike the rest of the mines in the area, it's just for us, for what we sell and what we do. We're not out selling sand and rock. It is for our operations. So that also goes to the impact in the area, right? We actually lower it because instead of hauling all that material in and the traffic and all of those things, we actually take it down because we produce it right where we use it. So I don't know if I answered all your questions, but I'm trying.
It's okay, I have a couple more. The noise level at night, is there any way that you could stop mining after 10? I understand it's a 24/7 operation, but being so closely to the houses, to the horses,
Yes, sir.
is there anything that we can do to?
So not to interrupt you.
You're good. You're good.
Ironically, the lighting issue, the way we have to manage lighting, that we've agreed to manage lighting, we won't mine at night. So the only operation that would go on at night would be just basically moving that material to make the concrete, which is obviously, we're not crushing rocks. It's far quieter. The neighbor, when you talked about the horses, I can tell you, we are there, or the guys that work for us are ropers, so we know the Duncans well. So part of this is just being a good neighbor, right? We can't mitigate everything as a big blanket, but we can mitigate it for our neighbors. You know, we already do for events. You know, we know when they have events. Obviously, we're participants and sponsors of that. But I know that that's not a legal or a zoning thing, but our goals are always to be good neighbors. Like I say, we participate. You know, I mean, we're there, you know, many of our guys are there, they rope. I have family that's here from Colorado right now at events next door. So we won't be crushing at night. So those mining operations, which are the particularly loud ones, won't be going on at night because it doesn't really make sense. Ready mix operations, that's tough because in Arizona, in the heat that we have, we make concrete early, not at night, but early in the morning. I mean, we do start, 11 o'clock at night sometimes on certain types of projects. And that's very difficult to mitigate, but those operations are pretty quiet in comparison to the mining operations.
What about the tractors and the backup horns and that kind of thing?
So those.
Excuse me, at 11 o'clock, people are sleeping.
I gotcha. Those can be mitigated, but there is, when you look at the impacts of that, so the trucks don't back up when they load. They come and go. So the only thing that backs up are the loaders. In our world, safety is still the major concern, but you are talking about one. You know, that there is only one tractor that manages that entire plant to load the truck. So it's definitely a smaller issue. When you're talking about moving closer to the horses and those, it's one of the reasons that we obviously chose to keep that eastern portion untouched and agriculture as long as we can. For one, the farmer, you know, the agricultural actually gets their hay from that property on most occasions because it's the cheapest, because it doesn't have to get hauled anywhere. So we chose that. And then the other thing is that the actual processing area, it'll never move that direction. So that'll be pretty well contained throughout the, you know, throughout the life until the very, very end. So, your concern, backup alarms, that's a really tough one because it becomes safety. And at the end of the day, it is complicated. The rest of the neighborhoods, those impacts will get smaller and smaller as development occurs. You know, we talked about directly to the north, that's a massive APS substation. So that'll actually insulate even more noise. The equestrian center, you are correct. That is the major impact. And I say that we know them. They're our friends, and if they have an issue, we're going to do what we can to mitigate it. That's not always, I guess, settling to the council. However, it is our commitment to the community, and I assure you, if you know, they've got my direct number, so if there's a problem, they wouldn't hesitate to call me. So, you know, some of this is tough to mitigate because there are safety issues, and it is that type of operation. But our commitment to that neighborhood and to our community, and for sure our neighbors, is at a very high level because we live here too. We're not a you know, multinational corporation that is coming in to just mine it as quick as we can. We're just using what we mine at that site. So it is probably the best it's going to get. And that site, even though it was annexed, it's a floodplain site. This is kind of what it's going to be at, you know, at some point. If it's not me, somebody else will continue to push this through. And that whole corridor, it's probably what it'll be.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your candid.
Absolutely. Anybody has any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Puppy.
I had one question. It's more, I think it's going to be more directed to our city staff, Mr. Mueller and Ms. Henry. I wanted to know, because you had stated that there doesn't seem to be very many regulations in place on this type of thing, that when that other plant went in, that I guess we weren't incorporated as a city maybe, I don't know, but is there a way that you can write up some regulations to make sure that when this is passed, we have those in place?
Yes, Chair, Commissioner Puppy. I believe you're referring to the site to the west that is
What I'm talking about is this is like setting a precedent, and I think it's important that our city establishes some kind of guideline there.
Yes, so this site itself does have more regulation and oversight than sites that would be located in unincorporated parts of the county, like the site to the west. It is subject to the full gamut of the development code. Now, I did highlight a couple things that maybe aren't applicable that typical site developments would have to adhere to, but it is subject to the full development code for regulation and oversight. A good example of that is the lighting. And additionally, the conditions that staff is recommending address some of the more specific things that maybe aren't in the development code. And that's really how we can create a little bit more oversight to these types of
Okay,
operations.
so it sounds like you are addressing some of those issues. Okay.
Commissioner Puppy, if I can just add to Joe's response. Since this is not a use that had been proposed anytime recently, we didn't realize we had a hole in our code. So we will be addressing that in our next round of code updates, which hopefully will be brought forward toward the end of this year. That will create more level playing field or standard conditions, standard requirements for these types of uses going forward. The initial thought is those requirements would vary based on the remoteness of the property. If it's, in the middle of nowhere with the nearest, residential a mile away, that probably has a different requirement need than a site where there is residential or a business or something operating next door. So that's our thoughts. We're going to handle that and address that in the next code update. In the meantime, anything for this particular site would need to be included in this conditional use permit. So Joe mentioned several stipulations that are already on there. Commission certainly in their purview could require more if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Galika.
Just to add also, as part of the Commission's review of this application, this is a conditional use permit, and you do have the ability to review whether or not the conditions that have been proposed by the staff as part of this application and recommendation do reduce or minimize any potential impacts to the neighboring properties. Tonight, you raised some concerns about the noise and the lighting concerns. So that is part of your review of the application. I don't know, Commissioner Puppy, if you had some questions about the scope of your review and how it may relate to what Joseph stated earlier about the code, because again, there is that question squarely in front of the commission tonight.
So if I were to propose something, how would I tell, you're your attorney, so I know you know how that should be worded. Basically, my concern is that we need to make sure that there are, the code is in place so that we can do this in the future, now and in the future, but that when we pass this one, I don't want it to be something that's going to be, like I said, set a precedent. And I also think it's important that we have that in place. When you did find that out, there was a hole, we need to have those regulations or, whatever requirements in place.
So your action tonight does not set precedent per se, because this is a very site-specific application and request. It's a conditional use application for this specific property with the characteristics and neighborhood of this specific property. So I don't know that that is as much a concern as it goes to the code, as Mr. Galika indicated. There would be the city would need to look at criteria for more remote properties that perhaps don't have the same characteristics as this site. So on the precedent piece. But to your other question about your concern, what seemed to be top of mind, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is your gravest concern the noise?
Noise, and I did think about the dust as well and the lighting, but that was addressed, the lighting was addressed before with I'm sorry, Commissioner Kupsik, sorry. And then I somehow didn't talk about the dust, but I think there are a lot of concerns. And that's all I have to say. I think my question's been somewhat answered. I still think that we might have to have some kind of a motion on this.
Chair, Commissioner Puppy, just one response or addition to your comment. I think noise is a completely valid concern. Light, I hope we've addressed with the stipulation already. Dust, I feel Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, they're hound dogs on making sure that dust is not an issue. So I can't say that there won't be ever any dust associated with this use, but that's policed pretty well throughout the valley because it's tied to a lot of funding. If cities are not in attainment, there's all sorts of repercussions and consequences. So if I had to prioritize, I would say probably the sound is what maybe is the biggest issue, it sounds like, to the commission at this point.
And I would agree with that, Mr. Galika. Thank you, guys.
And if I may go on record, I would like to stipulate the noise piece, if I could.
Chair, just to clarify, what noise piece exactly? How would you?
Well, I would like there to be a specific time frame for, and I'd like to say movement on the property, but I'm probably asking for too much. But that
And Chair, it does look as though the applicant's conferring with his attorney. I don't know if they may have some response to the question or concern.
Can I say one more thing? Since we're waiting, we were waiting. I want to reiterate that, Chairperson Burton, sorry. I've been going on little sleep for a few days here. I just got back yesterday from an airport that was, not fun. So, that his residence isn't far from there. And I don't know what other residences are within whatever proximity. And I know, like he had mentioned, Chairperson Burton, that there are residences there at the equestrian center. Or, I think I got that right. And that's a concern for the people. But I do have a concern for the horses. So I'm just going to stand with that. And we don't want a big eyesore and a noise sore for the people and the animals that are right next to it.
I could just, Chair,
yes, sir, Mr. Bliley.
to address your concern on the, I think if you'd like to add a stipulation that says there can be no extraction operations between the hours of 8 and 5 in the morning, happy to add that stipulation. That would further limit the noise potential for the site.
You said 8 and 5 in the morning?
8 PM until 5, there'd
In
be
the
no
morning, yeah, so
extraction.
8
Usually you'd put it
5 a.m.?
5 AM.
to 5 a.m. If that would satisfy, we can work around that.
That would limit the extractions to just pretty much the daytime.
Okay, can we add that, Ken?
Can I make
Certainly your option, if you would like to include that in any motion that the commission makes.
May I make a comment,
Certainly.
question? But that would be only operations that would not be loading and backing up that one tractor.
Correct, it would be the
Yes, that would
extraction.
just be, that would be the mining, which
But the tractor
makes
would
most
still
of the
be
noise.
beeping whenever-
I'm sorry?
The tractor would still beep all night long if it was loading and backing up.
We could limit the backup alarms because it's only one in that period of time as well. Now, keep in mind that 300 yards to the west, that doesn't change. I mean,
Right.
we're very willing to make concessions, but keep in mind that those 300 yards to the west, there is no controls over it.
But every time I hear a beep, I'm going to think of you.
I'll give you my cell phone number.
All right. Thank you. All right, at this time, if there's any more discussion?
Chair, just one thing, I would like to get clarity on the backup alarm. How can we include that in a stipulation? I have a draft of a stipulation for the hours.
So, the backup alarms, so we have they have what is a minimum decibel backup alarm. It's more like white noise. Instead of the beep beep, it goes it's annoying, but it's not a noise that carries. So there's certain places where those are in use, and that's kind of what I'm thinking we can do. I don't have the details on it, but it's a certain decibel level, and it's a hertz that doesn't, like, you don't, if you're not right directly by it, it doesn't carry. So it's not the traditional alarms. You know, the industry has been able to kind of quiet those down because the equipment itself has gotten so much quieter that there's something else to do that. So limiting those backup alarms, really it would be to one, and to what is I think they call them a white noise backup alarm. Within those hours, I think is not an issue. And it's rare, by the way, that we do those operations.
I don't mean to cut you off. Let me read a draft stipulation that council, that P and Z can consider, and also for your consideration. It would read, and this would be, I believe, condition U, would read, extraction operations shall not occur between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. Low impact backup alarms shall be used during these hours.
That is consistent with, I'm good with that.
Okay.
We can push that to, like, if it helps, we can do no extraction. I mean, we can really push that to like 6 p.m. You know, that it's the morning that is the impact. At night, it's hot and we don't do it. You know, I mean, we're usually shut down by then anyways. So if that helps, I mean, I'm good with 6 p.m., basically 6 to 5. If that makes it more palatable, we can work around that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sirs.
Thank you for being amenable. Appreciate it. All right, at this time, I will, if there's no more discussion on the commissioners, I will open this up for a public hearing. Madam Secretary, are there any requests to speak been received?
There are none.
All right, I will close the public. I'm sorry, will you come up, please, and state your name and your address?
Name's Don Nargang. I live at 10300 South Miller Road, which is the property we're talking about, the Equestrian Center. I'm the general manager for the Equestrian Center. I met with the owner, David Duncan, today, asked me to come to this meeting tonight. They talk about, we want to be good neighbors, and they say that they're very good friends. This, besides the two letters we got from Planning and Zoning about a meeting in December and this meeting, we've never been contacted by anybody at the adjacent property. It's an equestrian center, right, but we also have 80 RV spots that have been permitted back there through the city and the county for 20 years. It's a main revenue stream for us. I guarantee you, when we put a gravel operation across the ditch, which our property line actually is on that side of the ditch, on the west side of the ditch is our property line, we're going to lose revenue because people are not going to come and spend their retired money to live by a gravel pit that's running 24 hours a day. As far as they say that as they work east to us and then they'll get rid of that ditch, they cannot get rid of that ditch. That ditch is a drainage ditch. It'll either have to go underground or be replaced by something else because it don't just drain. It's not for that farm right there to irrigate. It's a drainage from all the farms above where all the wastewater comes down and goes to that property. As far as noise and dust, yes, that's the biggest thing, noise and dust. We're not against development or anything like that, but my boss, the owners, they invested a lot of money in that property to make it nice. And we get a lot of people from out of state. And when I put a gravel pit all around it on that side, I'm definitely going to lose my main revenue source in the RV park. The horses and noise, it's there. And I know it's not their noise now, it's the neighbor's noise, but it's there. The backup alarms, loading the ready mix trucks. I've been in construction my whole life. They pour concrete, they mix concrete, batch concrete all night. You know, it just happens. That's the way it is down here. If we, not totally against it, but if we could just work closer with you guys to try to figure it out. But I'm telling you, today is the first time that I was actually asked by Mr. Duncan to find out who the operators were so we could make contact. And tonight's when we found out. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other speakers, I just want to mention, I would
Wait,
like to make a
Chair- and
motion to
Chairman-
table this.
Commissioner Pepe, we still have the hearing, the public hearing that's open.
Okay.
Are there no other speakers from the floor? We will close the public hearing. Ms. Puppy?
Yes, I am going to make a motion. We've closed the public hearing, so I can do that, right? Okay. I would like to make a motion that we continue this for a later date after the applicant has been able to work with Mr. Nargay and the Duncan family as well. Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we put a continuance on PLZU 25-0006, subject to conditions A through T, until the applicant and the manager, and if so, and if necessary, the Duncan family are able to talk about this.
I'll second that.
Well, wait a minute.
Chair, Commissioner, if I may suggest adding a date specific to that, that would be my recommendation. It would, I think, incentivize parties to get together quicker, but B, would reduce the need for the applicant to run another ad in the paper and those types of things. So today is the 24th. We have an April 14th agenda. We have an April 28th. Either of those could potentially be options.
Okay, I would like to ask the applicant, I'm sorry, sir, I did not quite get your name, and Mr. Nargay, did I say that right?
Well,
Nargay, I just wanted to know if that's good for them. I think that's fair.
The earlier meeting's fine. April 14th?
The 14th. of
April 14th.
Could you step up to the mic, so we could hear it, so it can be on record, please?
Chair, the applicant's attorney has confirmed that April 14th is, should the commission approve this, the motion that's on the table, that the April 14th date is acceptable.
So at this time, I need a motion.
Okay,
I've already have the motion.
I think I need to restate it, or is it all right?
You can feel free to restate it if you'd like, for clarity
I
on the
would like to
record.
motion that we continue this PLZ, this case number PLZU 25-0006, subject to conditions A through T, until the April 14th Planning and Zoning meeting.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's continued. All right. Item number 4. Any comments from the public?
There are none, Chair.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Galika?
Thank you, Chair. Very minimal comments this evening. Our agenda for April 14th doubled in size during this meeting, so it went from one item to 2. So we will be back here in a couple weeks. look forward to that. The only other thing I wanted to note this evening is we recently, within the last 2 months, have made 2 internal promotions within the planning division. Jarek Dunn, who has presented several times to planning and zoning, was a planner 1, was recently promoted to planner 2. So he's taking on a little bit more complex workload. And then Bailey Paczynski, who as an intern presented and didn't have to present, but wanted to present, was recently promoted to the planner 1 position. So she's full-time now. She was a part-time intern. We're super excited to have both of them with us in increasing capacities.
Thank you, Mr. Galika. And I also want to say thank you, Ms. Henry, because without you, we'd be some bumbling idiots. So with that said, any of the commissioners like to have anything?
I just, if you celebrate, have a wonderful Easter season.
Mr. Ragsdale? Ms. Cupsack?
No comments.
Mr. Damasio?
I have nothing further to add.
Mr. Bassler?
Early on, you announced about a mural that was going to be put on the wall at the corner of Van Buren and Verada Way. That is beautiful. It really is attractive, and it is very well done. So I want to commend you for that. It's a nice sight to see.
Sebastian, you thought I was going to forget you, huh?
Nah, I didn't even forget me. I just want to say that this is the first time since the airfare I get to speak. The airfare was great. And I loved it. Hopefully we can do it again next year.
Thank you. And I have nothing further. So with that said, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.